You're facing 10 years in prison, my friend.
That's if Skeevers is alive enough to testify.
My client didn't mean that.
Comics are a great medium. Too bad you have to put effort and read them. The Batman Year One film is almost an exact adaptation, word for word, mostly scene by scene. However, the adjustments it does make ends up radically changing the themes. Wild claim, I know. The comic opens like a pyramid. We're introduced to Gotham through Gordon's tight claustrophobic perspective.
Thank God Barbara's flying in. She should have gotten the test back by now.
Before expanding to Bruce's, who in contrast isn't overwhelmed in his arrival, but instead is prepared for war. As a result, his perspective feels like a burst of freedom. Bruce's appearance connotes liberation and change, emphasized by how his panels, in contrast, are larger, with simpler imagery, a pattern that's carried out throughout the book. The film presents these scenes pretty much exactly the same, but it swaps it around so Bruce's words are now the first words.
From here, you can't see the enemy.
Therefore, the framing of the story begins to be subtly shifted. The priority is no longer about making home out of a bad place, but it's about soldiers arriving at a battlefield. Gordon himself is also kinda different. Instead of looking overwhelmed all the time with his wrinkly forehead, his back is straight, his eyes are hidden. He's like a warrior.
Something changing your mind.
Batman Year One really should be just renamed as Jim Gordon Year One, which I'm sure will just be as equally marketable. He's the one with the journey, while Batman is more like the weather, there to devastate the environment. Gotham is hell on earth, but you could have a pretty good time if you're filthy rich.
Right, Gil?
Or be a filthy cop.
Cops got it made in Gotham.
But where the comic paints Gordon's acclimation process with the arc of a good but ultimately weak man developing his strength to fight back, film Gordon is more like the lone sheriff, here to clean things up. Just look at how differently Flash is presented. His comic purpose is to make Gordon look weak. He's often the largest in frame, while Jim looks withdrawn all the time. But then there's flashes of a stronger person underneath, like when Jim studies Flash's moves.
Don't do a damn thing. Be sure of your facts before you bring down another cop. Just watch him.
Before using this knowledge for his retaliation later on. Thanks, Flash. You've shown me what it takes to be a cop in Gotham City. That line is also not in the film, because film Gordon arrives already as an alpha.
Call me Lieutenant.
Yeah, sure thing, Jimmy.
He stands nice and tall all the time. Most of his overwhelmed reactions are gone. With Bryan Cranston's voice, he sounds like a really confident bearded man. And during the car chase, not only did they dedicate an entire close-up to Gordon's disgusted expression towards Flash, but they hold on to it just to emphasize how he's formed a concrete and strong opinion about everything. Which recontextualizes the following scene where Flash reports to Loeb over how Jimbo isn't fitting in.
He looks at the 50 like it's diseased.
This Jim Gordon isn't someone accidentally being clean in a filthy place, he's actively in defiance of it. And now he's the new alpha here. Bruce's appearances, in contrast, is all about priming him with mythical and abstract qualities before he puts on the cowl, through simple and memorable imagery. The comic goes as far as taking away the background at times. Anyways, his street reconnaissance goes terribly wrong,
But even scum have families.
and he realizes he needs to create fear in order to survive, begging his father for an answer, which comes in the form of a bat. The film removes mentions of Alfred training in combat medicine, the Bat Cave, Zorro, and how he was frightened by bats as a boy, but the point is ultimately the same. Batman is created the moment he asks for help. The first act of Year One is about two manly men learning to survive in a city that speaks its own proprietary language of violence, where the rules are created by the strongest, where survival requires fear and change requires force. Jim now has enemies, but is protected by the media after he saved some kids.
Who wants gum?
Furthermore, the film puts a highlighter on his positive influence by making the cop that housed Brendan, the resident psycho, just a tad bit noticeable.
Lieutenant Gordon's on his way, sir. I really think you should— The hell with that spineless bastard.
I don't know, maybe I'm overthinking it, but he looks like a nice impressionable guy. You don't even see his face in the comic. In contrast, Batman barely survives his first night.
Lucky amateur.
But by the time Jim does his Batman presentation,
Batman, as the news shows are calling him, has committed 70 assaults in the past 5 weeks.
he's so good that even Flash doesn't think he's human. We're also introduced to Detective Essen, who in the comic lights Jimbo's cigarettes, literally showing off their spark. In contrast, the spark Batman lights up is his threat to Gotham's richest, something he explains in the comic as a calculated move after he's finally confident about his costume and weapons. A really badass moment where he canonically peed himself. In Act 2, both characters have found their place in Gotham as influential forces.
You've made a hero out of him.
Unfortunately, they're on opposite sides and haven't fully realized their full potentials. Loeb sends Jimbo on a manhunt.
Or it's your job!
In the comic, this causes an existential crisis. He laments how Batman has made an enemy out of every criminal and elected official, but now he's cornered for saving an old lady. He even forgets to identify the police as we in his mind, which explains why he doesn't help Brendan when he's getting his ass beat. In the film, he ignores him more as a joke due to their rivalry.
Wish I could help, but orders are orders. Breaks my heart.
Batman is more of a distraction for film Jim, because he's more focused on fighting corruption. In fact, after his affair with Essen ends, in the film he goes straight back to nailing Flash, as opposed to nailing Essen before she transfers out of Gotham. As a result, this has two major effects. First, the film ends up keeping them on mostly separate tracks. Like Bruce doesn't come to the conclusion that he needs Gordon as an ally. Secondly, Jim is a much stronger person by nature. His affair isn't a montage presented through internal monologues, but are actual scenes now, which admittedly, I'm not gonna lie, it makes him immediately less embarrassing, because we're not privy to stuff like him reminding himself, think of her as a cop, think of her as a cop. In other words, Jim is more in control of himself. The affair was more of a lapse of judgment as opposed to an obsession. This is anchored by this new speech he gives to Essen, explaining why he's here, explaining why he is the way he is.
The bullet points are police corruption, a cop who wanted to believe the system works, and one incredibly bad decision. There's a reason everyone hates internal affairs. They dangle the carrot of integrity and honesty, but at the end of the day, when you take down another cop, they treat you like any other low-life scumbag.
Jimbo is disenchanted by the system, which is why he's kind of flexible with the law. He's more committed to his own personal moral code, and this code is why the film's interpretation of the character isn't really conflicted with Batman. He knows the system doesn't necessarily make good people, and doing the right thing can turn you into an outsider anyways. Comic Jim isn't as morally strong. He even inappropriately brought Essen an expensive bracelet, but regardless, both versions look at Batman like it's an affair.
And I can't stop thinking about her. Like I can't stop thinking about this Batman.
However, this is also arguably evident that there's kind of like a supernatural force going on, steering him. Like Bruce speaking to his father, like all these crazy coincidences, like how these two good men would arrive at the wrong place at the right time, at the same time. There's something more here, a greater plan.
He's a criminal. I'm a cop. It's as simple as that. But I'm a cop in a city that uses its cops like hired killers.
Apart from a few discrepancies in the comic, this is all basically the same, except this dealer called Skeever gets out of the comic because of Harvey, while Gordon is distracted because he's mates with Batman. They're such good buddies that he even lets him sleep under his desk sometimes. Anyways, Jimbo gets a confession he needs, but Loeb has photos of his affair to use as blackmail, which ironically then distracts Jim so much that he stops focusing on his investigation, even though he's so darn close. After his interview with Bruce, where there's the whole playing the whole Playboy thing.
It is Batman you wanted to talk about, isn't it?
The film changes his drink from club soda to grape juice and added in this lady's funny reaction, by the way.
You guys are weird.
Jim stops thinking about this lead to painfully tell Barbara everything.
He's been sitting there for 10 minutes.
Then Catwoman, who's inspired by Batman, goes ahead and ruins his recon.
Now I'm his assistant?
But Bruce figures out what the mob is doing anyways, and it's here everything fits into place. Loeb draws out Jim from his family, while the mob kidnaps his wife and baby son. But Bruce leads him back in, leading to this incredibly badass moment where Jimbo doesn't listen and just starts shooting. Bruce follows and conveniently lands on a truck going in the same direction. But in the comic, he does the even cooler thing of using a bicycle. The baby falls, but Bruce catches him. Gordon ambiguously says,
You know, I'm practically blind without my glasses.
Thus, an unbreakable trust is formed. Jim cradles his baby, and for the first time smiles, because he realized there's hope. Flash implicates Loeb, leading to a federal indictment, although the film omits the detail of Loeb's replacement being someone worse in the coming gang wars, but then adds in Brendan going to prison due to Loeb, to give you a better sense of closure. At the end of the year, The promoted Jim smiles once again, waiting for Batman so they can deal with the Joker. Though the ending are basically the same between the two, I shockingly was left with two totally different feelings. The satisfaction of the comic was successfully seeing two people figure out who they are. The film left me satisfied with the journey of seeing two fully formed people figure out how to be who they are, and thus their home becomes better for it. So my first guinea pig Marlene has just passed away, and I wanted to take the credits of this video to eulogize her. I know it's pretty goofy and over the top, but I kinda need this right now. Marlene wasn't just a pet. She was really my friend. As I looked after her, she looked after me. From waking up early daily to get her cucumber, or giving her fresh veggies at night, she made me more responsible for myself, from the good days to the bad. I adopted her in 2018 from a Pets at Home, which I'm kinda suspicious at the time was really being used as a discount section. Anyways, according to the staff, Marlene got ill at some point and was thus shunned by the rest of the herd, so it felt particularly good looking after her. Then at some point, she became an incredibly important part of my life. She was there for me every day, throughout all of COVID, and I didn't really know how much looking after her meant to me until now, where I don't get to tell her good night every night, or hear her squeal when I come home. She drew out a love in me that I don't think I was really in touch with before. And I'll always remember her for that.